The wind over Sci-Fi sang like a knife. The desert was not made of sand here. It was made of broken glass. Millions of thin, clear flakes covered the dunes and valleys. When the wind rose, the flakes lifted like silver snow and cut the air. Locals called it a glass storm. Outsiders called it death. Elias Reed pulled a scarf tight across his mouth and watched the sky change color. He stood on the roof of a rust-red maintenance shed at the edge of the trading town of Carr. Beyond the low buildings lay the open glass sea, a desert of shine and glitter that hid old wrecks, broken satellites, and bones. Elias was human. He had the slow, careful way of walking that soldiers learned when they knew the ground could turn against them. Years ago, he fought for a cause that broke in his hands. Then he left the armies and the flags. He carried a scar under his ribs and a small tremor in his right hand that showed up on cold mornings. He fixed machines now. It was quieter work most days. A cold chime rang across town. Wind towers sang the warning, glass storm inbound. "Reed," called a voice from below. It was Hosk, a Thren with thin crystal plates along her arms and a mouth like a curved silver beak. "Down, lock the shutters. The storm line moves fast." "I see it," Elias said. The storm wall was easy to see even in daylight. It was a moving haze that ate the horizon, gray and glittering, full of burning flecks that flashed like fireflies in sun. In front of it, a small star fell from the sky. No, Elias blinked. It was not falling, it was limping. A ship. Its engine trail fluttered like a candle about to die. "Ship coming in," he said, pointing. Hosk hissed. "No flight path filed, we're closed port, if they come down in a storm." "Then they die," Elias finished. The ship staggered lower, clipped the top of a dune, and spun. A shard cloud burst up, bright as gunpowder. The ship vanished into it. Elias was already moving. He climbed down the ladder, boots hitting metal rungs in a steady rhythm. He ran to the yard gate. The glass storm was minutes away, maybe less. The wind carried ice in it. His breath smoked. Hosk grabbed his sleeve. "Are you mad?" "Maybe," Elias said. "Open the yard." "They can't pay." "Not asking them to." Hosk swore in Thren clicks and swung the gate apart. It shrieked over grit. Elias jumped into the battered crawler, an old, six-wheeled salvage rig with a cage-like cab and a plow on the front. He slammed the door and keyed the starter. The engine coughed, then caught. The rig shook like an old dog in winter. The storm line ran like wolves now, sharp and quick. Glass swarmed up and over the first roofs. The air filled with tiny knives. Elias forced the crawler out onto the main track, the plow pushing a wake through a thin drift of shards. The ship's crash site was a glittering scar in the near dunes. The hull lay crooked, a small hauler with a ragged hole ripped down one side. Elias braked hard, set the crawler against the wind, and dropped from the cab with a tool bag on his shoulder and a coil of synth line in his hand. He could feel the storm in his teeth. The sting of glass dust was already on his skin, tiny pricks like hot ash. He ran bent low and hit the ship's side with the heel of his hand. "Anyone alive?" he shouted. A weak light flickered inside. A shape moved, a hand but not human. Long finger bones with bands of pale crystal along the knuckles. "Hold on," he said. He jammed a pry bar into a seam and leaned into it. The tremor in his right hand betrayed him. The bar slipped, the edge cut his glove. He swore, shifted his weight, and used his whole shoulder instead. The panel gave an inch, then another. He wedged a second bar and heaved. The hatch popped, buckled, and slid. 3 figures were inside, 2 adults and a child wrapped in torn pressure cloth. Their skin was the soft gray of river stone. Thin tracer lines of white crystal ran under their skin like frost. Kethori, Elias guessed, one of the crystal singer peoples. Their eyes were wide and black, their lips cracked. "Come on," he said. The taller adult moved first, then staggered. A shard of hull had pierced the thigh. Blood, clear and bright like melted ice, ran slow. The other adult held the child and coughed, a wet sound. Elias threw the synth line around a rib of hull and locked it. "Take the line. Hand the little one to me." The child's eyes fixed on Elias' human face and did not look away. The little hands were cold and slick. Elias tucked the child close under his coat. The wind screamed. It was carrying real sand now too, dragged from far old seas mixed with the glass. It rasped against the ship like sawteeth. "Move," Elias said. They moved. The 4 of them went in a crooked line to the crawler. The wounded adult stumbled. Elias turned, got a shoulder under a crystal-lined arm, and half-carried the Kethori the last few steps. He shoved them into the cab, slammed the door, and dove in after. Shards struck the cab like rain. Some hissed through the vents. The child buried a face in Elia's chest. He put one hand over the back of the small head and kept his other hand on the wheel. "Breathe slow," he said to the room. "We're going to make it." The crawler bucked and rattled over the track. The storm swallowed the world to a circle of gray around them. The wind turbines in town sang deeper now, long, sad notes, like wails in a winter ocean. Hosk had left the yard gate open. Elias barreled through and hit the brake. Hosk and two dock hands and face shields rushed the crawler. They hauled the Cathori inside the maintenance shed while Elias locked the rig and dragged the gate shut. Only inside the shed did he let himself feel the cut on his palm and the ache in his ribs. He wiped his face and saw blood there mixed with tiny grains of glass, like red sugar. The Cathori child was staring at him, cheeks hollow, eyes too big. The taller adult, female, Elias thought, though he could not tell easily with their kind, leaned on a bench and tried to breathe without choking. Hosk thrust a water flask into Elias' hand. Elias passed it wordlessly to the Cathori. "Name," Hosk asked, voice rough. "Who are they?" The taller Cathori touched a hand to her chest, tapped the crystal plates gently, and spoke. Her voice had an echo in it that humans did not have, like two notes sung together. "Soria of the Cathori line Rill," she said in slow trade, each word like a careful step. She put out a hand toward the child. "This is Leo. This is my brother Aren." She swayed, caught herself. "We seek protection." Hosk glanced at Elias. Kar was a trading town far from the major ports. It survived by staying small and offering no trouble to anyone. Protection meant trouble. "From who?" Elias asked, though he already knew what answer might come. Soria looked at him. "From the Galactic Council," she said simply, "from their purity edicts." The room went quiet except for the thin hiss of glass against the shutters. Soria's story came in pieces between sips of water and fits of coughing. It matched what Elias had heard across a dozen rumor boards and ship bars, except it was not rumor here. It was real, close enough to touch. The Galactic Council had called it the Purity Doctrine, just like they always did when old empires made new rules with soft names. 1,000 years of peace, enforced by fear, had taught them which words sounded good. Now they had decided that hybridization, biological, cultural, technological, was impurity. Species must not blend. Worlds must not mix. Minds must not cross boundaries. Those who did or could would be relocated for stability. Relocated meant erased. Stability meant control. Soria's family line could sing to crystal and make it grow in certain shapes. Her people had traded with many worlds. They built instruments, memory spires, energy cages, gentle tools, mostly. They were singers, not fighters, but their gift made them vectors of impurity, the council said. Their works allowed minds to join and knowledge to spread fast. That was dangerous. "I was a teacher," Soria said, eyes down. "I taught children the safe notes, the old shapes. We did not break laws. We did not cross lines. It did not matter." Aren, the brother, lifted his head. "They came at dawn," he said hoarsely. "Auditors in white ships. They said we were scheduled for relocation. We ran." He coughed again, a deep sound. Hosk moved to him with a med kit. Elias' hands were steady with other people's pain. He cut Aren's pant leg carefully, found the shard in the thigh, and worked it out. Cathori blood looked not like human blood. It was clear at first, then clouded slowly like water with a drop of milk in it. He cleaned the wound and sealed it with a patch. "You know they will track you," Hosk said roughly. "No ship crashes unnoticed now. If an auditor marked you, they marked you to the bone." Soria nodded once. She put a hand on Leo's back. The child leaned into her and stared at the floor. Elias felt something move under his ribs, deep and old. He had seen this story before on other worlds with other names. He thought he had gotten away from it. He had left the regiments and their always-on anger. He had chosen a small life where the only things that bled under his hands were machines. Now the storm outside hummed like a saw and the room smelled like fear and engine oil, and he knew the small life was over again. The wind towers sang a new note, sharper, like a blade pulled free. Hosk stiffened. "That's not storm code." Elias moved to the wall screen and tapped it active. The town feed showed the main square. A bright shape hovered in the dust, sleek, white, long as a tram car, with the clean angles and the polished skin that meant central authority. It was a council drone. An auditor's voice came from it, amplified, soft, empty of feeling. "Citizens of Kar, This world is under observation for violations of purity edicts. A vessel carrying impure vectors has entered your airspace. Comply with inspection. Any who shelter impure vectors will be relocated. The drone's camera turned. It held on the maintenance yard gate for 1 second longer than chance. Then it rose and moved on. Hosk looked at Elias. Hosk's voice was flat. They saw you. Maybe they saw the gate, Elias said. They saw you, Hosk said again. Elias could feel the tremor in his right hand begin. He put that hand in his pocket. He kept his voice even. We can move them. There's a place under the east stacks, old coolant tunnel. The drone didn't scan there last month. You want to hide them here? Hosk's crest plates lifted. Reed, do you remember what happened to Asa when she hid the colonists from Cell? I remember, Elias said quietly. Asa had been dragged into the sun. They had called it lawful removal. Small towns did not survive by being noble. They survived by not being noticed. Soria spoke, voice raw. We can leave. We can try the dunes again. But the child, she looked down at Leo, who had wrapped thin arms around himself and shivered. He will not survive another storm. Elias looked at the child. Leo's eyes were full of the same wide, dark look he had seen in too many refugee faces. It was the look that asked without asking, are you going to be the kind of person I hope you are, or the kind I fear? He swallowed. The small life was over. He had known it the moment he drove into that storm. We'll hide you, Elias said. Hosk stared at him for a beat, then blew out a breath and shook her head. Fine, east stacks. Now, if they scan, they might see the thermal trail. Move. They moved. Elias and Hosk led Soria, Aren, and Leo through the back of the maintenance shed, across a narrow alley under a low awning, and into the storage hall where old machine guts lay in rows like sleeping animals. At the far end was a rusted hatch. Elias kicked the latches free, hauled it up, and a breath of cold air sighed out from below. The coolant tunnel was a narrow cylinder the size of a small train. It smelled like old metal and water. Hosk tossed down a coil of heat rope and a canvas tarp. Wrap the rope around them, she said. Bleed the heat into the pipe. The drone will read the tunnel as ambient. Aren went first, then Soria lowered Leo into Elias' arms and slid down herself. Elias followed, pulling the hatch half-closed behind him. Above, the wind tower song shifted again, another note from the drone, not from the storm. They tucked the refugees against the curved pipe, wrapped them in tarp and heat rope, and let the cold creep into their faces and hands. It would be uncomfortable, but it would hide them. Elias switched off his headlamp. The tunnel fell into deep gray. Why are you doing this? Soria whispered. You don't know us. Elias thought of the old war and the faces he couldn't forget. He thought of the morning he quit the unit, and the way the officer had looked at him like he was trash. He thought of the simple joy of fixing a broken pump and bringing water to a line of dusty people. He thought of the moment outside in the storm when a small, cold pair of hands clung to his coat. Because someone did it for me once, he said. Because I'm tired of leaving people behind. Silence held for a beat. Leo's breathing slowed. Aren's breath hitched when pain moved through his leg and then settled. Above, the drone's voice floated down, muffled by metal. Inspection ongoing. Purity Codex engaged. Hosk touched Elias' arm in the dark. We should go back up, she breathed. If they find us all here. Elias nodded. I'll come back when it's clear, he told Soria softly. If we don't come back in an hour, there's a hatch further down. It exits near the old water plant. Soria's hand found his in the dark. Her fingers were cool. Thin seams of crystal lined the pads of her fingers like frost veins in stone. She squeezed once. Thank you, she whispered. Elias squeezed back. Then he and Hosk climbed out and pulled the hatch closed, leaving the three of them in the cold and the dark. Back in the shed, the screen showed the drone in the square again. A small crowd had gathered at a careful distance, traders, kids, a pair of tired miners with dust still in their hair. The drone dropped a bright metal sphere onto the cobbles. It unfolded like a flower and projected a three-dimensional image in the air, a stylized spiral with a bar across it, the purity seal. A voice, not the drone's voice this time, but richer, with the weight of authority, spoke from the projection. I am High Auditor Crawl, it said. The figure that appeared inside the seal had a long, pale skull with soft plates laid over it like a carved mask. His eyes were black jewels. This world will submit to inspection. Our records show human nationals present in Car. Humans harbor impurity everywhere they go. Any human residents will come forward for screening. Refusal is admission. Admission is relocation. Hosk's head turned slowly toward Elias. He felt the old tremor in his right hand again. It had started after the last firefight he saw, when the medics took a small piece of shrapnel out of his ribs and left a smaller piece they could not reach. It was his private weather vane for trouble. It hummed now. "It's me," he said softly. "They're fishing, but they know they've got a list." "You didn't register," Hosk said. "It wasn't a question." Elias shook his head once. "I liked being a nobody." Hosk pressed her lips thin. "You can run out the east gate, take a runner. The storm will hide your trail." "And leave them?" Elias asked. Hosk didn't answer. Her eyes said the thing she didn't say. "We are small. We cannot fight the sky." The drone drifted down the main street, scanning doorways, reading heat lines, pinging old metal with glossy sound. It paused at the maintenance yard gate again. It turned slowly, like a shark with nothing but time. Elias' calm bead buzzed against his ear bone. He touched it. "Read," he said, voice low. A voice he hadn't heard in 2 years spoke in his skull. Tight, controlled, worn. "Elias, it's Mara." He closed his eyes. The small life was really over then. Mara Vance had been his co in the old days, the only officer he respected because she cared more about people than orders. After he left, she vanished into rumor. "Where are you?" he asked. "Above you," she said. "Literally, in low orbit, don't look up. The Council has a net around Sci-Fi, but nets have holes. Listen, the purity edicts are moving into phase 2. They're not just relocating anymore, they're sterilizing. Seed strikes on cities that help refugees. If Car shows up as sheltering vectors or even as failing inspection, you'll be marked for cleansing." His mouth went dry. "What timeline?" "Hours," she said. "Crawl is a clockwork man. He likes theater, then he likes fire. I can poke his net, but I can't stop the hammer. I need something from planetside if I'm going to jam his call, a resonance key from a Kethori memory spire. Without it, I'm pushing noise into a symphony. With it, I can turn his broadcast into a lullaby." Elias looked at the closed hatch to the coolant tunnel. He thought of Soria's fingers in the dark. He thought of the child's silent stare. "There's a singer here," he said. "A Kethori, maybe she can give you what you need." "If she's willing," Mara said. "If she's strong. Crawl will lock the town down soon. I can give you a window and maybe a shield, but once I show my hand, the Council will know I'm here." On the screen, High Auditor Crawl's image shifted to a countdown circle. Numbers ticked down from 60. "Compliance interval 1 hour," his voice said, "after which cleansing begins." Hosk whispered, "Read." Elias felt the old soldier step up inside him, quiet and clear. The world seemed to narrow and brighten at the same time. The storm hissed against the shutters. "Patch me to the town board," he told Myra, "and keep that window warm." "Copy," she said. "Elias, you sure you want back in?" "I was never out," he said. "I was just resting." The drone outside the gate turned to face the maintenance yard directly. Its lenses opened like dark flowers. A thin beam of blue light scanned down the metal and paused over the storage hall door. Inside the coolant tunnel, the air turned colder. The countdown on the square screen reached 59. High Auditor Crawl's voice flowed like oil. "Begin internal audits," he said. "Humans first." A new sound came then, deep, low, and wrong. The sky outside brightened in a straight white line far above the storm. The line thickened to a spear of light. The town feed flickered as static crawled across it. The wind tower's song broke in every direction at once, a scream of metal. Hosk looked up with wide eyes. "That's orbital," she said, voice very small. "That's a spear warming." Elias took one step toward the coolant hatch, another toward the door, torn between below and outside. The white line in the sky became a star. And then it began to fall. The white line in the sky split the storm apart. For a second, the world froze. Every shard of glass hung in the air like glitter in amber. The spear of light burned downward, carving the sky into halves. Its target was not a city dome or a fleet base. Its target was Kar, a trading town of rust sheds and wind towers. "Inside," Hosk screamed. "Get under cover." But Elias didn't move. He had seen orbital fire before. He knew the signs, the way the atmosphere warped around it, the smell of ozone even before it hit. He knew what it meant to stand under a weapon too big to fight. His whole body wanted to lock up and accept it. Then the comm in his ear snapped sharp. Myra's voice cut through like a knife. "Not today, shield up in 3-2. The spear slammed into something invisible high above the town. A shockwave rolled out, a deep thud that knocked Elias to his knees. The sky lit blue-white, brighter than noon. The glass storm flattened under the blast, shards raining instead of flying. A dome of rippling crystal light hung over Carr like an eggshell. The spear split against it, pouring energy sideways. Dunes melted into rivers of glass. Wind towers snapped. The air shook. Hosk stared, crest plates shivering. What is that? Elias pushed himself up. His ears rang, his bones rang, but he was smiling despite himself. Refugee tech, he said. Somebody up there knows their tricks. The comm crackled. Myra's voice came again, strained. That shield is borrowed. It'll hold for one, maybe two more strikes. You want your town alive, Elias. You move now. Copy, Elias said. He turned to Hosk. Get the refugees out of the coolant tunnel. Bring them to the east stacks. I'll buy us some space. You can't buy space against that, Hosk snapped, pointing at the sky. Watch me, Elias said. The drone in the square hadn't moved. It floated steady, recording everything. When the shield caught the spear, it tilted slightly, like a curious animal. Then its voice carried through the storm again, cold as a knife. Unauthorized shield detected. Impurity confirmed. Escalation authorized. The countdown on its projection reset, not to minutes this time, but to seconds. 30, 29, 28. Elias sprinted across the square. His boots slid on wet glass shards. The drone swiveled toward him, lenses focusing. He yanked the pry bar from his belt, the same one he'd used to crack the Kethori ship hatch. His hand shook, but his eyes didn't. Elias Reed, the drone said. Somehow it knew his name. The council always knew. Human national, you are unregistered. You will comply. Yeah, Elias muttered, breath ragged. Comply with this. He hurled the pry bar. It spun once, twice, and struck the drone's projector node. Sparks burst. The countdown froze at 21. The drone wobbled, buzzing like a hornet. Elias Dove grabbed a shard of crystal glass the size of his arm and jammed it into the drone's underside. Circuits sizzled. The drone shrieked in machine tones. For a second, Elias thought it would explode. Instead, it went dark, dropped like a stone, and shattered on the square stones. The projection flickered out. Silence fell, only the storm hissed. Then the comm bead flared. Myra again. Nice work, Elias, but you just made yourself their top priority. More drones inbound, bigger ones, and Crawl's not going to wait for countdowns anymore. Elias wiped blood and glass dust from his face. Then we better not wait either. The coolant hatch groaned as Elias hauled it open. Soria blinked up at him, her gray skin pale, crystal seams faintly glowing. Leo was curled against her chest. A wren leaned heavy on the wall, leg patched but weak. You must move, Elias said. Now. Soria searched his face, saw the blood, the scorched edges of his coat. You fought them. I stalled them, Elias corrected. Can you do better? Her black eyes narrowed slightly. Better. Mara's voice came through Elias' comm. Ask her about the resonance key. Elias crouched, kept his voice low. You have songs, crystals, a way to shape memory, right? Soria hesitated, then nodded once. We need that, a resonance key. Without it, we can't stop Crawl's broadcast. With it, we can turn his own system against him. Aren rasped, you ask her to sing in storm time, with soldiers above. I'm asking her to survive, Elias said, same as the rest of us. Soria shifted Leo to Hosk's arms. She stood straighter, though she shook. There is a shard, she said. In our wreck, memory crystal, if it's not broken, it can serve. Elias swore under his breath. The wreck's half buried by now, storm's eating it alive. Then you will dig, Soria said softly, and for the first time there was steel in her voice. The wreck lay out in the dunes, its outline barely visible through sheets of flying glass. The crawler's plow had already vanished under a drift. The hull groaned when the wind struck it, metal screaming. Elias tied a scarf over his face, pulled goggles down, and forced the hatch with both arms. He crawled into the ruined ship, breath hot and loud in his ears. Everything inside was shredded, panels ripped, wires dangling like dead vines. But one panel still glowed faintly, pulsing blue. A crystal spire no bigger than a child's arm was set in the console. It hummed faintly, a vibration he felt in his teeth more than heard. He touched it. The spire sang back, one note sad and lonely. He yanked it free. The whole ship shook as if it had sighed its last. Outside, something roared. not the storm, engines. He looked up through broken hull. White ships, sleek and sharp, cut through the haze like knives through cloth. Auditor craft, soldiers of the council. Elias clutched the spire and ran. They met him at the east stacks. Hosk, Soria, Aren, and Leo crouched behind the old cooling pipes. Mara's voice filled Elias' ear. "You have it." Elias held the spire up. It glowed faint blue even through the storm. "Good," Mara said. "Now listen, Krall's fleet is triangulating. They'll fire again soon. If we can push the spire's song into their comm net, we can scramble their codes, stall their fire control, maybe even flip their own system. But we need the singer." Soria stepped forward, hands trembling but steady enough to take the crystal. She pressed it to her chest. The seams in her skin lit, running like frost fire across her arms and neck. "I can sing," she whispered, "but I need focus, I need silence." The storm howled. Engines screamed above. Soldiers were coming down in drop pods, white shells splitting open in fire. Silence was impossible. Elias put a hand on her shoulder. "Then I'll get you silence." He turned to Hosk. "Take Aren and the kid into the stacks. Don't come out until I say." "And you," Hosk demanded. "I'll make noise," Elias said. He stepped out into the storm with his rifle slung across his back and a prybar in his hand, the spire's song still humming in his teeth. Above, white pods fell like rain. The first pod cracked open 20 meters away. A council soldier unfolded from it, white armor gleaming, visor black, rifle sleek and humming. More pods fell, opening like flowers of bone. The soldier raised its weapon. Elias lifted the prybar. His voice was steady, though his hand shook. "You want impurity?" he called. "Come and get it." The soldier fired. The beam never hit. A sudden surge of sound cut through the storm, not from Elias, not from the soldier, but from the stacks behind him. A song, high and pure and sharp enough to split bone. Soria was singing. The crystal spire in her hands blazed. The seams in her skin flared like lightning. The air itself shivered. Elias felt the song crawl into his blood, into the fillings in his teeth, into the scar under his ribs. The council soldier staggered, visor cracking like ice. Its rifle sputtered. All around, pods dropped and soldiers stumbled out, only to falter as the song spread, a wave of sound that bent the storm itself. Shards of glass hung in the air, vibrating to the same note. In orbit, high auditor Krall's fleet lit up like struck bells. Their comm nets screamed. Their fire control blinked. Their countdowns froze. Mara's voice snapped into Elias' ear, urgent. "That's it. She's in their net. Elias, hold them as long as she can sing." The storm became a battlefield of sound and glass and fire. Elias raised his prybar, heart hammering. Soldiers reeled toward him, blinded, weapons stuttering. He swung, struck, ducked, drove forward. Behind him, Soria's song climbed higher, pulling the storm with it. Shards turned into a halo of light. Leo clung to Hosk, eyes wide. Aren braced against the pipes, bleeding but grinning through it. For a heartbeat, it felt like maybe, just maybe, they could survive. Then the sky split again. A voice rolled down from orbit, deeper and colder than any drone. Krall himself, cutting through the song with sheer will. "Enough." The storm died in an instant, glass shards falling like rain. The shield dome above Kar cracked. The spire in Soria's hands flickered, dimming. She gasped and fell to her knees, the song breaking off. Elias turned, bloodied prybar in hand, and saw the impossible. A figure stepping down from a burning column of light. High Auditor Krall had come to the surface himself. The storm had stopped as if someone had cut its strings. Glass rained down in a slow silver curtain. Shards tinkled against the broken crawler, the bent towers, the roofs of Kar. In the middle of the square stood a tall figure wreathed in light, his pale skull plated like carved marble, his eyes two pits of polished obsidian. "High Auditor Krall." Even the air seemed to bend around him, heavy and sharp. Elias felt it press on his chest, on his scar, on the old tremor in his hand. Krall was more than flesh. He carried the weight of the Council's will, an empire of 1,000 worlds stacked behind his thin shoulders. Soldiers in white armor spread out around him, rifles steady. Their lenses gleamed blank. The storm glass crunched under their boots. Elias forced himself upright, prybar clenched tight. His legs shook, but he planted them wide. Behind him, Hosk hissed low in her throat. Soria was on her knees, the crystal spire dim in her hands. Oren tried to rise but fell back against the pipes, breath wheezing. Leo clung to him silently, eyes like two black mirrors. Kral's voice rolled across the square, calm and terrible. "Human, step aside." Elias spat blood into the dirt. "Name's Elias Reed. I don't step aside for tyrants." A flicker passed over Kral's perfect face. Not anger, not surprise, something colder, calculation. "You stand with impurity. You invite extinction." Soria lifted her head, voice raw. "We only live as we are. That is no crime." Kral turned his gaze on her. "Your kind sang to stone and opened doors that must stay closed. That cannot be allowed." His eyes moved back to Elias. "You humans are young. You could have learned. Instead, you shelter filth." Elias felt the tremor in his hand grow into a quake. He forced it to stillness by sheer will. "Funny thing about humans," he said. "We don't like being told who counts as people." The soldiers raised their rifles as one. The square filled with the high-pitched hum of charging weapons. In Elias' ear, Mara's voice came like a thread of steel. "Elias, don't try to fight him head-on. He'll break you. Buy me time. I'm working the spire's signal into their fleet net. 30 more seconds and I can flip his command tree." 30 seconds, Elias muttered. He gripped the prybar tighter. "That's forever down here." Kral lifted one long-fingered hand. The rifles angled to fire. And then something unexpected happened. The ground shuddered beneath the square. A low, rumbling growl, pipes under the east stacks vibrated. The crystal spire in Soria's hands flared back to life, faint but steady. She was singing again, not with her voice this time, but with her blood. The seams under her skin glowed, pulsing with the spire's light. Kral's eyes narrowed, defiance. The rifles fired. Elias moved without thinking. He lunged in front of Soria, prybar raised like a shield. The first shot slammed into the ground near him, spraying molten stone. He rolled, slammed the bar into the knee joint of the nearest soldier. Armor cracked. The soldier went down with a grunt. Hosk leapt from behind the pipes, her crest plates flaring. She drove a jagged shard of glass into another soldier's visor. Sparks burst. The soldier collapsed, twitching. Oren, half dead on the ground, grabbed a broken pipe and swung it with all his failing strength at the ankles of a third. The soldier stumbled, giving Elias room to drive his prybar into the throat seam. The square became chaos, glass, fire, and bodies colliding. But Kral didn't move. He simply watched, hands folded behind his back as if observing insects struggle. His soldiers fought and fell, but his eyes stayed on Elias. "You bleed for them," he said, almost curious. "Why?" Elias ducked a swing, cracked his prybar into a soldier's helmet, and shouted over the clash. "Because no one else would." Above, Mara's voice sharpened in Elias' ear. "Almost there, almost got it, I'm in." Elias, hold him one more breath. "Not sure I've got that," Elias grunted, driving his shoulder into another soldier. Kral lifted his hand again, not at his soldiers, but at the sky. His voice rose in a command word, a tone that rattled Elias' bones. The fleet in orbit shifted, their spears warmed again. Then the crystal spire in Soria's hands blazed white. Her song pierced every channel. The fleet's countdowns froze, scrambled, then reversed. Screens on soldiers' wrists filled with gibberish. Ships above wavered in formation. Myra shouted through the comm. "It's working, she's turning their own codes against them." Kral's blind. For the first time, High Auditor Kral's composure cracked. His black eyes widened just a fraction. His perfect voice lost its calm edge. "Impossible." Elias grinned through blood. "Get used to it." He lunged forward, swinging the prybar with both hands. It struck Kral's chest and stopped cold, as if the air itself had caught it. Kral hadn't moved. The prybar trembled in Elias' grip, frozen inches from the auditor's pale armor. Elias strained, teeth gritted, but it would not go forward. Kral tilted his head slightly, studying him. "You are stubborn, that is all." He flicked one hand. The prybar ripped free and hurled across the square, clanging against stone. Elias staggered back, chest heaving. "Elias," Mara shouted in his ear. "Fall back. I can collapse the shield around Kral, but you need distance." Elias spat blood, wiped his mouth with the back of his hand. His right hand shook so badly now he could barely close it into a fist. He looked at Soria, still kneeling, still glowing, her song barely holding the spire alive. Leo clutched her side. A wren was half unconscious. Hosk was bleeding from a gash in her shoulder but still crouched with glass in hand. They were all looking at him, waiting. He met Crawl's black eyes and made his choice. "Do it, Mara," he said. The comm crackled, "On your mark." Crawl stepped forward, one hand reaching out as if to simply close around Elias' skull. Elias raised his shaking hand, middle finger extended, and shouted, "Mark." The sky tore open. A hidden satellite, one Mara had seeded months before, ignited. It dumped all its stolen energy into a focused lance aimed not at the town, but directly at the square. The world went white. The last thing Elias saw before the blast hit was Crawl's face twisting, not in fear, not even in rage, but in disbelief. When the light cleared, half the square was gone. Stone bubbled like wax, soldiers lay shattered, the drone was ash. And Crawl was gone. The air still trembled with his absence, like a bell that had been struck. Elias dropped to his knees, coughing blood, vision blurring. The spire in Soria's hands dimmed to nothing. Her song ended in a broken gasp. She slumped sideways, unconscious. Mara's voice came through the comm, heavy, urgent. "Elias, you need to move. That wasn't enough to kill him, not a creature like Crawl. He'll rebuild, he'll come back, and when he does, he'll bring the whole council with him." Elias looked around at the broken square, at the wounded refugees, at Hosk trying to bind her shoulder with strips of cloth. He forced himself upright. His ribs burned, his hands shook, but he stood. "Then we move," he said hoarsely, "and next time we don't just survive, we fight." Far above, in the burning remains of orbit, a signal pulsed into the dark. A voice, cold and furious, carried on tight beam channels to the Council's core worlds. "Impurity confirmed. Humanity has declared war." The shield dome above Carr collapsed with a sound like breaking glass. What little safety it had given was gone. The wind towers lay in twisted heaps, and smoke drifted up from shattered roofs. The town was broken, but not dead. People crawled from doorways and tunnels, coughing, bleeding, staring wide-eyed at the ruined square. They had seen a high auditor descend from the sky. They had seen a human stand in his way, and they had seen a weapon from orbit fail to kill them. Elias leaned on his knees, ribs screaming. The tremor in his right hand had spread up his arm. He forced it still long enough to pull Soria up. She was limp, her crystal seams dim. Leo clung to her side, silent tears carving lines in dust on his face. Hosk staggered over, clutching her wounded shoulder. "We can't stay. The next strike will finish the town. They won't stop now." A wren limped behind her, one hand pressed to his thigh wound, jaw tight. "They'll burn the whole desert to bury us." Mara's voice came sharp in Elias' ear. "She's right, my jammers bought you minutes, not hours. Crawl's fleet is regrouping. You need to move east. There's an old port hidden under the dunes. If we can reach it, I can lift you off-world." Elias looked around at the frightened faces peering from behind broken walls. Dozens of people, not just refugees. Traders, miners, children, all had heard the auditor's ultimatum. All knew the council would come back. "They'll be slaughtered if we leave them," Elias said. "They'll be slaughtered if you don't leave," Mara snapped. "You can't fight an armada with a prybar, but if we get out, if we build something bigger, then maybe they have a chance." Hosk's crest plates rattled. "She's right. If you die here, no one will remember. If you live, maybe the galaxy does." Elias shut his eyes for half a second. He felt the old soldier inside him, the one who had sworn never to come back, rising again. He hated that part of himself, but he also knew it was the part the galaxy needed now. "All right," he said. "East Stacks port, we move." They left Carr under cover of smoke. The crawler had survived, though its plow was bent and one wheel shrieked with every turn. Elias drove, eyes burning from dust. Hosk sat beside him, a shard spear across her lap. Soria and Leo huddled in the back with a wren wrapped in heat blankets. Every bump in the track drew a hiss from a wren's teeth. The desert stretched out endless and cruel. Glass dunes shimmered under a pale sun. Far behind, smoke rose from Carr, dark against the horizon. On the comm, Mara guided them. 2 hours east, there's a ridge. Beneath it is Port Ashen. Old smugglers used it a century ago. Council forgot it. If we reach it, I can land. Elias gripped the wheel tighter. "And if we do?" "Then you'll see the spear fall for real," Mara said. Night came fast in the desert. Heat bled away, and the dunes turned blue under 1,000 sharp stars. The crawler's lamps lit a narrow tunnel through the glass. Shards scraped its undercarriage, whining. Soria stirred, eyes half open, voice raw. "Where are we?" "Running," Elia said, "east to a port." She touched the spire lying across her lap. Its glow was faint, like a candle guttering. "They'll chase, they always chase." "They'll bleed for it this time," Elia said. Her gaze flicked to him. "You risk much for us, why?" He thought of the boy clinging to her side, of the fear in Carr's faces, of the way Crawl's black eyes had looked at him like he was already ash. He answered simply, "Because somebody has to." Soria's lips trembled into something almost like a smile. She closed her eyes again. The ridge appeared just before dawn, a jagged spine of black stone rising from the dunes. At its base, half buried in glass drifts, stood the old port. Rusted towers, collapsed hangars, landing pads cracked but still wide enough for a ship. The crawler rolled to a halt, engine clunking in protest. Silence fell heavy, broken only by the wind. "This is it," Elia said. Oren dragged himself out of the crawler, wincing with each step. "Empty, good." "Not empty," Hosk said softly. Her crest plates quivered. "Hear that?" At first Elias heard only the whisper of wind. Then he caught it, metal on stone, faint but steady, footsteps. Figures emerged from the shadows of the port. Not council soldiers, too ragged, too thin. Their armor was scavenged, their weapons mismatched. Their eyes glowed faint green in the dawn. Refugees, dozens of them. Different shapes, different skins, all marked by exile. A tall, four-armed figure stepped forward, voice low but clear. "You bring the singers." His gaze fell on Soria. "Then you are welcome." Soria swayed but lifted her chin. "We come for shelter, we bring warning. The council hunts us all." The figure nodded once. "We know, we've been waiting for someone to stand." Elias' grip on his prybar tightened. "And if we stand?" The figure's four hands clenched into fists. "Then we fight." Mara's ship broke through the clouds minutes later, black and lean, engines whispering. It settled onto the cracked pad, scattering glass dust. Elias felt something shift in his chest as he watched it land. For years he had tried to live small, to stay quiet, to let the galaxy spin without him. But now the galaxy had come to his door, and it was burning. The hatch hissed open. Mara Vance stepped down, scarred and weary, her eyes sharp as ever. She looked at Elias, at the refugees gathered, at the spire glowing faintly in Soria's hands. Then she said words Elias knew would change everything. "This is the start of something bigger. The council wanted purity. We'll give them unity instead." High above, in the black halls of a council dreadnought, Crawl stood in a chamber of ice and shadow. His form was cracked from the blast, one side of his perfect mask scorched. But he still stood. His voice was steady as he addressed the other auditors. "Humanity has chosen corruption. They gather the impure. They forge alliances. If they are not erased now, they will grow." He looked out the viewport where stars burned cold. His words carried like a curse. "The purity wars begin." The underground port smelled of rust and old oil. Its walls were black stone reinforced by steel ribs, half buried under dunes that had swallowed it long ago. The hangars echoed with voices now, human and alien, refugee and wanderer, all gathered in the hollow dark. Elias walked through it with the strange sense of stepping into a dream. For years he'd kept his head down, fixed machines, avoided wars. Now every corridor rang with talk of rebellion, with the scrape of weapons dragged from crates, with plans whispered over maps. Soria moved slowly beside him, leaning on a carved staff that hummed with faint crystal tones. The spire she had saved lay in a cradle of metal, wires running from it into Mara's ship. Refugee engineers fussed over it, tapping readouts, listening to its song. It had become their heart. Hosk strode ahead, her crest plates rattling with restless energy. She'd taken charge of defenses, drilling groups of miners and traders in how to hold a line. Her sharp voice echoed across the port like a hammer on anvil. Oren limped after them, wrapped in fresh bandages. His face was pale, but his eyes glowed with a kind of quiet fire. Leo clung to his arm, silent as always, but watching everything. And Mara was everywhere. She moved like a commander again, scarred face lit by the glow of data screens, her voice crisp as she directed repairs, negotiated with aliens, and planned the impossible. That night they gathered in the command chamber, an old loading bay with maps spread across rusted tables. Faint lamps painted everyone in gold and shadow. Myra stood at the center. The council calls this a purge. We call it survival. But if we stay on the run, we'll lose. We need to make them bleed. We need proof that they can be hurt. A murmur ran through the gathered crowd, refugees of every kind. Tall, insected Dathri clicking their jaws. Broad-shouldered Velter with metal plates fused into their skin. Whispering Zephyrians whose black eyes never blinked. Elias folded his arms, so we hit them first. Mara nodded. There's a relay station 2 systems out. Council uses it to track refugee traffic. It sends orders to every fleet in this sector. If we take it, we cut their eyes. More important, we show the galaxy that the Council isn't untouchable. Hosk hissed softly. You want to raid a Council relay with miners and runaways? Not just miners, Oren rasped. His voice was rough but steady. We have singers, machines, minds if we stand together. We die together, Hosk cut in. Soria raised her staff. Its crystals sang a faint chord, silencing the room. Or we live together, she said. Her voice was soft but carried. For centuries, the Council kept us apart. On Earth, we learned to share. That is what they fear. If we share now, no wall can hold us. Leo looked up at her, eyes wide. For the first time he spoke, his voice a whisper. Then let's fight. Silence fell, heavy and electric. Myra looked around the table, meeting every eye. You heard the boy. The Purity Wars started when they came for us, but we decide how they end. The days that followed turned Port Ashen into something alive. Humans taught Velter how to aim rifles. Velter showed humans how to fuse machine reflexes into flesh. Zephyrians whispered tactics into commanders' ears before the words were spoken. Dathri built walls of chitin and steel. Soria sang crystal into new forms, blades, shields, circuits that hummed with hidden strength. Elias found himself training groups of volunteers, teaching them the simple tricks of survival he thought he'd forgotten. How to move low, how to listen to silence, how to fight with whatever was in your hands. The refugees listened, learned, and taught him in return. At night he sat with Soria by the spire. She sang softly, weaving songs that mended cracks in its crystal. He asked her once how she still had the strength to sing after all she'd lost. She answered without looking at him, because if I stop, they win. On the 5th night, Myra called Elias aside. They stood on the roof of the port, the desert stretching out silver under the moons. You've changed, she said. Elias snorted. Haven't had time to shave, if that's what you mean. She gave him a look. I mean you stopped running. He didn't answer at first. The tremor in his hand shook against the rail. He clenched it into a fist. I thought I was done. I thought I could be small, but then I saw that kid look at me like I was the last thing between him and the dark. He shook his head. Guess small doesn't work anymore. Myra's eyes softened for just a moment. It never did, not for people like us. The alarm came at dawn. Sirens wailed through the port. Red lights flashed across black stone. The command chamber filled with shouting. A scout ran in panting. Council dropships, a full wing, they found us. Elias grabbed his rifle. How long? Minutes. Hosk snarled, plates rattling. We can hold them, we have walls, guns. But Myra's face had gone pale. You don't understand, if crawl, with them walls won't matter. As if on cue, the comms cracked with a voice that froze every heart. You cannot hide in shadows, impurity shines too bright. Crawl. He had found them. The port shook as the first bombardment hit, dust and glass raining from the ceiling. Refugees scrambled to positions, weapons raised. Soria clutched the spire to her chest, its light flickering. Leo stood at her side, eyes fierce despite his fear. Elias chambered around, heart steady. He looked at Mara. Well, guess the war came early. Myra drew her pistol, eyes burning. Then we give them a welcome. Outside, the desert lit with fire as Council dropships descended like burning knives. Soldiers poured out in white armor. And above them, a larger shadow moved, sleek, terrible, unmistakable. High Auditor Crawl had come himself again. The first bombardment turned the desert floor into fire. Glass dunes melted into rivers of molten light. Port Ashen shook from its foundations. Screams echoed in the hangars as refugees scrambled for cover, rifles clutched in shaking hands. The walls rattled with every blast. Elias slammed a fresh magazine into his rifle. His voice cut through the panic, low but sharp. Positions, hold the lines, you want to live, you move with purpose, eyes up, breathe steady. Hosk's crest plates flared as she strode down the barricades. Glass spears front, rifles behind, no gaps. The miners and traders listened. Her harsh voice gave them steel. Myra stood over the command table, pistol drawn but eyes locked on the tactical feed. Dropships incoming on 3 sides. If they break us here, it's over. We hold or we burn. Soria pressed the spire to the ground. Its faint light crawled along the floor like veins of frost. She sang, her voice raw, pulling crystal from the very walls. It rose into barriers, sharp and jagged, humming with resonance. Leo stood by her, eyes wide, whispering the notes back as best he could. Oren braced a captured council rifle against his shoulder, limping but steady. Let them come. The desert above roared. Dropships slammed down like hammers, kicking up storms of fire and glass. White-armored soldiers spilled out, rifles humming. And with them came the shadow. High Auditor Crawl descended from the largest ship, wrapped in light like a cloak. His pale mask was cracked from the battle at Kar, but his eyes were colder than before. He raised one hand, and every council soldier moved as if one body. Impurity gathered, his voice boomed. Eradication begins. The first wave hit the outer barricade. Dathri insectoids charged forward with glass spears, clicking war cries. White-armored soldiers met them in a spray of plasma fire. Shards shattered, armor cracked, bodies fell. Elias took his line to higher ground. Pick your shots, don't waste heat. His rifle cracked, beam after beam lancing out. One soldier fell, then another. A Zephyrian beside him whispered enemy positions into his mind before they appeared. It was like fighting with foresight. Hosk hurled a jagged shard through the air. It pierced a soldier's visor, dropping him instantly. She roared, her voice carrying over the chaos. Ashen stands. Inside, Soria sang harder, sweat streaking her stone-gray skin. The spire pulsed under her hands. Crystal walls grew thicker, splitting incoming fire. Leo pressed both palms to the spire, humming along. The boy's small voice steadied the note, doubling its strength. Oren covered them, firing bursts into every gap. His wounded leg trembled, but he stood. Sing louder, sister, the walls are holding. They will not, Soria gasped, her voice breaking. Not against him. Because Crawl was moving. He walked through fire as though it were rain. Every step shattered Soria's barriers with a flick of his hand. The crystal sang in pain, splintering, collapsing. Soldiers followed in his wake, pressing deeper. Elias saw it happen and shouted over the comm. Focus fire on the auditor, bring him down. Dozens of rifles turned. Beams lanced the air, striking Crawl's form. For one heartbeat, the light swallowed him. Then he raised his hand. The beams froze midair, hung like glass threads, then whipped back, slashing through barricades. Refugees screamed and fell. Mara slammed her fist on the console. He bends physics like clay, damn him. Crawl stepped into the outer bay. His voice filled every chamber. You defy the council. You gather filth under one banner. This is not survival. This is war, and war ends in silence. Elias dropped behind cover, chest heaving. His scar ached like fire. His right hand trembled so badly he could barely reload, but he forced the rifle steady and stood again. He shouted across the port, his voice raw but fierce. Then hear us, auditor. We don't die quiet, we don't kneel. You call us impure, fine. We'll make impurity your grave. The refugees roared back, voices rising over fear. Dathri clacked their jaws. Velter slammed their plated fists on the floor. Zephyrians cried wordless songs into the dark. For the first time, they were not just exiles, they were fighters. The battle turned desperate. Council soldiers pushed into the hangars. Barricades cracked. Plasma fire lit every corner. Mara fired until her pistol overheated, then drew a blade and cut through armor with soldiers' precision. Hosk fought like a storm, her shard spear red with blood. Soria sang until her throat bled, the spire flaring with each broken note. Leo's small hands never left it, his voice a trembling echo that kept her standing. Oren's rifle roared until it was dry, then he swung it like a club. And Elias became the iron core of the line. He fought with rifle and prybar both, moving wherever the wall was weakest. He was cut, burned, bleeding from half a dozen wounds, but he never stopped. Refugees saw him and found courage in his refusal to fall. But Crawl was unstoppable. He strode deeper into the port, swatting aside fighters like dust. His cracked mask glowed with inner light. He raised both hands, and the spire in Soria's grip flickered. She screamed, the crystal blackened under his will. Leo cried out, clutching her arm. A wren tried to shield them but was hurled back against the wall. Elias saw it happen. His chest clenched. He broke cover and charged straight at Crawl. He swung the pry bar with every ounce of strength left. It rang against an invisible field, sparks spraying. He swung again and again, screaming wordless fury. Crawl looked at him with cold amusement. You think flesh can challenge eternity? Elias spat blood into his perfect face. I think humanity can. And in that instant, the spire flared once more, not from Soria's song but from dozens of voices. Refugees across the port shouted, sang, cried. Their combined will poured into the crystal. The spire exploded in light. Crawl staggered. For the first time he faltered. His mask cracked wider, revealing dark veins beneath. His voice hissed, edged with fury. This is not the end. This is the beginning of your extinction. The light swallowed the chamber. When the glare faded, Crawl was gone. Only scorch marks remained where he had stood. His soldiers, leaderless, faltered. Refugees surged forward, driving them back into the desert. Dropships lifted in retreat, engines screaming. Port Ashen was in ruins, walls broken, fires burning, but it still stood, and so did its people. Elias dropped to one knee, exhausted, blood running from his side. Soria crawled to him, eyes dim but alive. Leo clung to them both, tears streaking his face. Mara stepped into the ruined bay, face set, voice grim. We won the battle, she said. But Crawl lives, and now the council knows we can hurt them. They'll come with everything. Elias forced himself upright, gripping the bloody pry bar. His voice was hoarse but steady. Then we'll be ready. Let them come. Port Ashen just became more than a hiding place. He looked at the battered refugees, at the spire's shattered fragments glowing faintly on the floor. His words carried through the wreckage. This is where the Purity Wars truly begin. The ruins of Port Ashen smoldered for 3 days. Refugees dug trenches, buried the dead, and welded broken walls back together. Smoke hung over the desert, but voices carried through it, voices that refused to be silent. Elias walked the wreckage with a bandage wrapped tight around his ribs. Every step ached. His right hand shook more than ever, but he carried the pry bar anyway. People nodded to him as he passed, Dathri with shattered armor, Zephyrians with hollow eyes, human miners blackened with soot. They looked at him not as a soldier, not as an outsider, but as proof that the council could be resisted. Soria sat among the shattered fragments of the spire, her fingers gently shaping them. The crystal sang weakly, flickering like embers. Leo curled at her side, asleep with his head against her arm. A wren cleaned a rifle with quiet, methodical motions. Mara entered with her usual stride, a datapad under her arm, her scarred face grim. They're coming, she said without ceremony. Crawl lost face on Sci-Fi and again here. He won't run a third time. The council fleet is moving. They'll bring a Purifier-class dreadnought. If it fires its core, there won't be a desert left. Hosk hissed low, then we are finished. No, Elias said, his voice carried across the chamber, low but hard. Not finished, not yet. He looked at Soria. Can you rebuild the spire? Her black eyes met his. Not as it was, but with help, perhaps as something new. Then do it, Elias said, because when Crawl comes, we're not running, we're ending this. The work began. Refugees poured everything into the broken crystal. Velter fused shards with their machine-augmented hands. Zephyrians whispered resonance codes. Dathri hammered steel frames to hold the growing lattice. Humans wove circuitry into it, binding song to signal. Soria guided them all, her voice hoarse, her blood staining the floor, but her eyes bright. The spire grew taller than a man, humming with many voices. Not a weapon of purity, but of unity, every race, every gift woven together. They named it the chorus. Mara studied its output with awe. It doesn't just scramble signals, she murmured. It amplifies them, every voice connected, every thought shared. If we bring this to battle, we won't just fight together, we'll be together. Elias touched the glowing surface. It thrummed into his bones, steadying even the tremor in his hand. Then we take it to Crawl. The council came with fire. The dreadnought filled the sky, black and vast, its core glowing like a false star. Hundreds of warships surrounded it, sleek white knives cutting through the void. From its bridge, Crawl watched, his cracked mask gleaming, fury burning in his black eyes. "Bring me their ashes," he commanded. But the galaxy had changed. From hidden moons and shattered colonies, ships rose, patched freighters, mining barges, stolen frigates. From Earth itself came sleek new cruisers, painted with the colors of a people who had chosen defiance. And at their heart flew Mara's ship carrying the chorus. Voices filled Elias' mind as they approached the dreadnought, not through comms but through the chorus. Hosk's battle cry, Aren's steady focus. Soria's song, clear despite her pain. Leo's small whisper, "We are not afraid." For the first time, humanity and the exiled sang the same song. The battle was chaos made music. Council ships struck first, lances of white fire tearing through the dark. But the chorus pulsed, and fleets that had never trained together moved as one. Human cruisers dodged in patterns whispered by Zephyrian foresight. Dathri rams tore holes where Velter plasma bursts had already cracked armor. Every blow answered in harmony. Elias stood in the gunnery bay, Prybar hooked to his belt, rifle in hand. His voice joined the chorus, shouting orders before the enemy even moved. He felt others guiding him, steadying his shaking hand, making him more than himself. The dreadnought's core brightened, gathering the power to scour whole worlds. Crawl's voice thundered across the void. "Purity is order. Order is survival. You cannot stand against eternity." Soria's voice rose in answer, her song weaving through the chorus, carried by every voice. "Unity is life. Life is strength. We will not bow." The chorus flared, and the dreadnought shuddered. Crawl himself descended once more, this time onto the hull of his dreadnought, wreathed in fire. His body burned with unnatural light, veins of shadow crawling through him. His voice cracked with rage. "Then I will break you myself." Elias launched from Myra's ship in a tethered pod, landing on the dreadnought's surface with magnetic boots. The vacuum bit his skin, but the chorus filled his mind, steadying him. Across the hull, Crawl waited, taller, brighter, terrible. "You are one man," Crawl said. Elias hefted his prybar, the old metal glowing with chorus light. "I'm every voice you tried to silence." They clashed. Crawl struck with hands of fire, tearing metal. Elias dodged, swung, felt the bar connect with cracks in the auditor's mask. Light burst. Voices roared in his skull, guiding each strike. For every blow Crawl gave, Elias stood again, lifted by 1,000 hands. At last he drove the prybar into Crawl's chest. The chorus flared, channeling not just Elias' strength but everyone's. Soria's song, Hosk's fury, Aren's will, Leo's innocence, Mara's command. The dreadnought rang like a bell. Crawl screamed, his perfect mask shattering into shards of light. His body split, unraveling into dust and silence. The Purifier's wrath went dark. The Council fleet faltered, ships broke, fled, surrendered. Across the galaxy the signal carried, the High Auditor was dead, the Purity Doctrine was broken. On Earth, in refugee camps, in hidden ports, in scattered colonies, people cheered, wept, and sang. The galaxy that had been divided for millennia felt the weight lift. Weeks later, on the neutral world of Haven, a new assembly gathered. No high seats, no hierarchies, a circle every species equal. Humans sat beside Kethori, Zephyrians beside Dathri. The chorus stood at the chamber's center, humming with many voices. Elias stood at its edge, scarred, weary, still trembling, but smiling. He had not sought command, but stories of him had spread across the stars. To the exiled, he was proof that compassion was stronger than fear. Soria stood beside him, her crystal seams glowing softly, Leo's hand in hers. Myra leaned against a rail, arms crossed, eyes proud. Hosk clicked her plates in satisfaction. Aren walked with a cane, but his eyes burned bright. The assembly voted. A new charter passed, outlawing exile, outlawing purity, declaring unity the foundation of the future. Historians would one day call it the Great Opening. That night, Elias stood outside under Haven's twin moons. The air smelled of salt and flowers. For the first time in years, his hand was still. Soria approached quietly. "Do you believe it will last?" she asked. Elias looked at the stars. "No peace lasts forever, but this one it's worth fighting for." She smiled faintly. "Then we will fight together." Leo's small voice piped up from behind them. "No, we'll live together." Elias laughed, a sound that startled even himself. He put the prybar down on the grass, letting it rest. For once, the galaxy felt wide enough for everyone. And somewhere in the stars, Embers of the council still smoldered, watching, waiting. But humanity and all who stood with them were ready. The Purity Wars had ended. The Age of Unity had begun.